It's time for
Scripts and Scriptures Disclaimers.
Jean Verhoeven here with some very important information. My panel and I just finished watching this film. Some people use this show to see if they want to see the movie, and some people watch the movie first and then listen to us. The list is available at wicxradio.org. If you're part of the first group, then
beware, there are plot spoilers in the following discussion.
We also have to tell you, while we think they are smart, witty, insightful, and profound, our opinions are solely ours and do not reflect the management, staff, or board of WICX or affiliated radio groups, or maybe even you. However, our panel is very proud of the results. We are not theologians or apologists, but we are movie fans and hope you are too. Enjoy. Ready? Lights, camera, action!
Take one. That clapboard tells us it's time for Scripts and Scriptures. I'm Jean Verhoeven. We will be watching faith-based films and shows and discussing their quality, insight, value, and enjoyment. I'm so happy to welcome our guests tonight. We've got Susan Stevens and Lloyd Kintz and Daniel Saletti. And Daniel Saletti is actually a radio host who has a show about secular movies and discusses them. So he'll be a good addition today. This time we watched Risen, starring Joseph Fiennes, and it's directed by Kevin Reynolds. This 2016 film had some similarities to The Robe from 1953, but thankfully, like many more modern biblical films, life is not as pristine, and you see a lot more of the hardship. We follow the evolution of a Roman tribune involved in the crucifixion as he tries to reconcile encountering Christ and the apostles. That's the risen Christ. So, my first question for you, and we probably will ask this every time we do a movie, are legends and fictionalization of Bible stories and condensing of timelines and things like that, is that okay for Catholics?
I think it's great. I've always learned the Bible through Bible stories, and it seems like the tradition, the oral tradition, and just in a natural way to study.
Any thoughts, Susan?
Well, I was thinking the original Christians. That's how they spread the word of Christ, through stories and storytelling.
That's right. The written word was very hard to come by.
And I can imagine the different languages they would have to speak. It got changed a little bit, or fictionalized.
It probably got changed several times, actually, over the years. Of course, some things haven't changed. We have recreational drinking, we have fake news, corruption in government, manufactured evidence. We also saw gambling and violence and betrayal, and we even saw PTSD, and there was some bribery going on. So what else hasn't changed since biblical times?
Lots of emotion. I caught that. I caught the Peter had emotion, and our lead character
Claudius
got emotional towards as the movie went on. He got more wrapped up in it.
Yeah, he encountered all of those things, and you could see a real evolution in him, I thought, which is always good in film to have a character change and evolve. Any comments, Daniel?
Well, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of similarities between today and then from what was going on then. It's different because you see a lot of humor between a lot of the characters, and you do get together when you have a person coming back that you haven't seen for a while, and you get back together. That's what you do, and you could definitely see that when the disciples get back. The apostles get back with Jesus, and they see him for the first time after the crucifixion. They're delighted to see him, and yet they're very welcoming to have the Roman come in. So I like how you still have get-togethers even all the way back then.
There's certainly a lot of interest, I thought, in the way different people were cast. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I thought it was a very different from other movies casting of Christ. And as it turns out, it was so different that the guy's actually from New Zealand, one of the native Maori people there. But did you find this depiction more accurate, less accurate?
Pretty much. Wasn't Jesus born in a Middle Easterner?
Yes, definitely. Because oftentimes, at least in art, and sometimes in the movies, blonde, blue-eyed, but I don't know, I felt, and I think also from art, we think of this kind of a longish face and all this, and he was smiling so much. Of course, let's face it, he's resurrected now, and he's probably feeling pretty good. But I found one of the biggest differences was this was a definitely smiling, happy guy, which I thought was kind of nice. It was different.
It was.
After he got through the worst part there, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Another casting interest was, I felt, well, no, you tell me. Did you find Pilate to be weak or strong or just a typical politician?
I thought he was a supporting character this time. Other editions of this type of story have made him much more dominant and powerful, and here he was just a supporting character. I thought the role was much more with our lead, Claudius.
I'm going to point out a few things that I felt were discrepancies. Now, it doesn't mean that they were bad. It's just that they were either for time or sometimes a lot of these times they give you a conglomeration of one character represents a lot of different phases. But they were fairly accurate, I thought, in most things. One thing is about the Mary Magdalene as a prostitute. Quite a while ago, 1969, the church changed their what I want to say, biography. The Orthodox Christians, they never had her pegged as a prostitute. They've decided in modern times that she was a devout follower and actually a financier, because she came from higher class than they thought. But this, even though this is a 2016 movie, they still had Mary as the wicked woman. Also, the number of times Christ is seen after the resurrection, I'm sure that was just a time saver. But if you didn't know anything about it, you'd think that they had only seen him 2 or 3 times, when I guess it was many, many times. What else? Oh, it says the ascension is said to be at the Mount of Olives, which is the same as where the agony in the garden was, toward Bethany. And in this film, although filmed in Malta, it was kind of depicted, it seemed like, at the Sea of Galilee, but they were combining the throw the nets off to the side story and all that. So, but I didn't think that was such a big deal. Also, he did not ride a cloud. It was almost a little science fiction-y at the end there, though. But who knows, really? The other thing, they kept referring to him as the Nazarene, which, from the Roman point of view, which is where this goes, that makes perfect sense. However, there were Nazareans and Nazarenes, and even the definition of those has changed over the centuries. A Nazarene was simply someone from Nazareth, as was a Nazarene, but the Nazarene became a sect of Jews, almost like today's Jews for Jesus.
Oh, I see.
They kept all their Jewish traditions, but they followed Christ. And then there was another, there's a church, the Nazarene, Church of the Nazarene Church. So, and then there was, I think there was also a definition, let's see, where it changed. It was in post-Latin, 16th century, when they made the distinction between just somebody from Nazareth and this sect. And I think there were members of this sect who may have been more like activists or militants or whatever. So I don't know in the movie which they were calling him, just a guy from Nazareth or whatever. But
well, you got to think of it this way. I mean, things are liable to change when it comes to movies, and even movies in particular with this type of genre in the religious films. Mm-hmm. All films are liable to change, however. So I mean, the thing about Mary Magdalene, it might be strange to say, but she could be a prostitute in this one and then not be the prostitute in the other one. I mean, it all depends on the time of the movie it was made and whatever definition was at the time. I mean, you mentioned the part about 1969 there, how the definition changed, so that could be a thing. What you mentioned really quick about the casting thing, I also kind of find it funny that you have Tom Felton as a villain in this case, because he was still a villain in his popular role in Harry Potter, so it's kind of fun to have him as a villain still. And even Jesus there, you're right, he's seen more as this big blue-eyed type of person. I mean, you have...
he wasn't blue-eyed in this one, yeah.
Yeah, but you see mostly in older films, I can't speak for the most popular Jesus, Jim Caviezel there. I can't speak for him because I'm not sure what eyes he had, but in the 60s you had King of Kings with Jeffrey Hunter, Captain Pike from Star Trek. He was big blue-eyed. And then I remember seeing a miniseries one time called Jesus of Nazareth that was made in 1977, I want to say. And for years, I referred to him, unfortunately, as a little bit of a unsettling Jesus because he had wide blue eyes. So I
think didn't he have short hair in that one too?
No, he had long hair. Jeffrey Hunter had short hair.
Jeffrey Hunter had short hair.
And it's just kind of unsettling if you think about it. But this one was very, very, welcoming is a good word, I think, for it.
All right, Daniel, since you know your movies, explain this to me. Why do all the religious films, especially the old ones, always have that choir in the background going, oh?
Well, that's very simple, and that's very simple, which leads into actually a true fact, cloud surfing.
Cloud surfing.
Cloud surfing,
okay.
like you mentioned before.
Okay.
That's, no.
And you notice they all have English accents, too?
Yeah, I mean,
Richard Burton, Gene Simmons in the robe.
Well, okay, yeah, the choir thing is kind of self-explanatory with the cloud surfing and joke. That's self-explanatory. It's a Jesus film. It's a religious film. It's a God film.
We know.
But I mean, you don't have all Brits in these films. You have John Wayne as in Centurion in Greatest Story Ever Told. He's a Western guy, so go figure.
That's for sure.
Go figure.
I noticed he still had his spurs on in that. No. Anyway.
He truly was Son of God. Pilgrim?
No. I found some of the producers and directors' quips that were interesting. We watched the one of the features, and they said it was done from a Roman person's angle. And they really wanted to tell it as a detective story. And I thought that was a very good way to put it, because in so many ways it really was a detective story. The other thing they said that I thought was very clever, they said that there was actually another cross in the story. And you know what? And their point was that the Tribune starts high in his career, high in his life. He's climbing the ladder. And the apostles are these kind of, low, I won't say low lives, but low in lifestyle. Let's put it that way. And then he goes on to say, as the apostles rise and the Tribune is falling, that's where they cross, quotes, in time. And I thought that was very clever. Another, part of the evolution of their relationship.
If you call that a second cross, then I'd like to say I saw a third cross.
Oh, yes.
Because I don't know if this was intentional or not, but at the very end of the film, where the Tribune, whose name I'm not going to try and pronounce,
Clavius.
We'll go with that. He's leaving the person he was talking to and telling the story about, and as he's leaving, the camera is panning through a window, and the window, there's a cross.
The window pane. I saw that too.
So you have to ask yourself: is that like a wink?
Yes,
Are they going for that, or is it just a window? So if the metaphorical cross is the first one, and then the obvious cross is the first one and the second one, this might be a third one.
I'd go for that.
Yeah,
sounds
and they have other subtle things in there too. I caught the comment about a day without death.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
right.
What did the guy really want? A
Peace.
day without death, maybe.
Peace and a day without death, and that's what he wanted.
That's what he had said to Pilate in the hot tub there, or whatever it was.
I don't know if they call it that.
The baths.
The baths.
The baths. Yes, the baths. So let's get back to Clavius there. Do you think that we or non-believers can still have those upper room moments like Clavius the Tribune had? I mean, you saw the shock on his face, and he just couldn't reconcile things. Do we do that today? Do we have those moments?
Well, I mean, you have to ask yourself. I mean, this was one of those moments where he had two choices. He could either be the expression we saw, confused yet calm, or you can be scared out of your mind because you just executed this guy. He should be no more, and yet there he is having a laugh. Yeah, I mean, in modern day, yeah, it could be a little unsettling too. I mean, again, it's the choice. You can be calm and confused or scared out of your mind.
Have you had any?
There are
of those
several times in a lifetime it happens.
I think it's called "Come to Jesus" moment.
There you
There
go.
it is.
That's exactly what we call it. Oh. Yeah, that was different. You mentioned about doubt. Now, it was obvious by one of my favorite lines in the movie is where Peter says, he's asked a question, what comes next or something, and his answer is, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And so, was the doubt or confusion by Peter, do you think that was possible after all he'd been through with the man? I mean, and did he cast the nets out to the right side of the boat? Did he do it out of obedience? Or was it confirmation of the Lord, or did he need proof? What was going on with Peter?
I think that was just faith.
Yeah, I think it had to be faith by knowing the biblical description and what a bad night Peter had had. Before that, he finally was really relieved to.
Yeah, 40 days earlier he'd had a really bad night.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
That's what he shouted. Faith!
Yeah. But I loved the I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. We're followers, we go to find the truth. So that worked out well.
It's fair to say I think Peter kind of had a handful of the best lines.
Yeah, I think he and the two guards from the tomb there were I don't want to call them exactly comedy relief, but they were certainly gave us lighter moments.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, the one guard that was paid off obviously was going through some pretty bad PTSD there, I think, after what he saw. But the first guard, we saw him first at the crucifixion. And I was very taken at the compassion, or at least maybe he just wanted things to hurry up. I don't know. But did you notice that he was saying to one of the thieves there on either side, saying, it'll be over soon. Just after he just whacked him with broke his legs. And then he also said, he's helping him, just breathe out, let it go, let it go, let it go. And I thought, well, I guess they were people too, and maybe they had it in their heart. You'd hope for it, wouldn't you?
Well, at that moment, it was that comedic one where he says, "It'll be soon," and then whack him. It was like a Monty Python kind of
almost,
scene.
yeah.
That it was sort of this comedic moment.
Yeah.
Monty Python had his own fair share with this story too, and
Well,
it's not very good.
We're not gonna go through that one. I'll tell you. At least
we won't be reviewing that film on this show.
When Christ was, they had camped out. It was the night before to whatever the Ascension, and the Tribune is bedding down for the night, and he looks up on the rock above him, and there's the Lord. Christ says to him, "You have seen and doubt. Imagine the doubt of those who haven't seen." And is that most of humankind, or is that most of Catholics? I mean, there's a pretty scary statistic out there from Pew Research. 70% of Catholics do not believe in the real presence. Now, I don't know why they call themselves Catholic, but okay.
Well, isn't that part of being a Catholic?
Yeah, and 50%
It's in the rule book.
50% of those 70% say that they were never taught it or never heard of it. Now, I don't know how you can become an adult Catholic, go through all the sacraments, assuming, and not know that, but this is what is being said. So when he says, imagine the doubt of those who haven't seen, this scares the japers out of me. I mean, and if this is the state of the church now, it's kind of no wonder we're shrinking.
I mean, it's, to someone who's not a Catholic, yeah, it can be kind of hard to comprehend here. I mean, even somebody in the church itself might even ask themselves, like, they'll understand, like, yeah, it's kind of hard to comprehend sometimes.
70% of them.
but I mean, read the book.
Or just go to mass, and
Yeah.
and then it's
in common film talk, either read the book or watch the movie. The proof's there.
Okay.
I mean, you have your options, or you can go. You
the
can
mass,
go.
and that's where you see it happening.
Exactly.
Well, my answer to that is, and maybe this is, I hope it's not heresy or whatever, but my answer is, if the creator of the universe can put himself into a human form and be a child and grow up, and he can do all these other things, I would think becoming bread and wine is not that big a deal compared to becoming that's a little crude, but you know where I'm going with that.
He can do anything,
and that's of course where the faith comes in.
Faith.
In that same vein of the numbers of non-believers, as the apostles disperse, and you think of, just think of this. You got a handful of lower class, is that what I want to say? Working class, lower class guys, and they were able to start a tidal wave right across the globe. Now, today, atheism is gaining in leaps and bounds, and churches are shrinking. In fact, we live in the state with the least number of attendees across all faiths, which is surprising. However, I would say I've noticed that those who do attend here are so devout, they've shed the non-believers, but the ones here are still pretty strong. How can we reverse this trend in Catholicism using Catholic means? I mean, that's a pretty big question, but do you have any thoughts?
Well, we don't talk about our faith anymore because we're taught, at work you're not supposed to talk about faith, and you don't want to the disciples spoke of faith.
The founding fathers spoke of
Right.
faith.
But now it seems like it's not a good thing to talk about religion and politics, I guess.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about
Christians are one of the groups that it's still okay to pick on.
You make more movies.
You make more movies.
More movies. And and what I mean, there are those people out there. Now this was a Columbia Pictures, Sony Pictures film.
Yeah, which surprised me that it was a major studio.
And they are part of like the big 7 or 8 or something studios out there that make films, and so maybe if you get bigger studios like them, maybe people will go see them. And this was in theaters, I believe. This wasn't just a one-time.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. I think first time I saw it was in a theater.
So-
well, it's a division of Sony called Affirm. And then there's the other studio that makes those God Is Not Dead movies and that kind of. They're they're another studio, I think.
Right, but
They're out there. I mean, they're.
The point is that the first company you see is Columbia, and they're part of the big ones. So, if you get bigger studios like that, maybe you'll get more recognition. Now you have smaller things that are growing, like
Pureflix, right?
and they do a lot of stuff, and they sometimes every so often will get a name. Like I remember seeing a commercial of one with Sean Astin in it.
Don't they have a whole channel? Pureflix or no?
They're not necessarily a channel, but
But they make these friendly, family-friendly, faith-based movies.
yeah, they have and they have names like Sean Astin, Hercules,
yeah.
Kevin Sorbo,
Yeah, that's it.
and a bunch of others. And so I think if you get more studios and more names, people are maybe going to see those
Can't hurt.
and say, "Sure, now I'm going to go see this."
Getting back to the church, though. Well, even EWTN, puts out some movies.
Even EWTN,
There's
yeah.
one on Cattery Tekawitha, which maybe we'll watch. But
Say that 3 times fast.
hey, she's from my area. Anyway, what I was going to say was pre-Vatican II, and I don't know about you guys, but I was on the cusp here. Pre-Vatican II was Baltimore Catechism, question, answer, and I had that till about 3rd grade. Then all of a sudden, all we got was love, 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 love. Now, is there anything wrong with that? Of course not. 11th commandment, they say, and all that. Except people my age and younger don't know their faith, can't defend their faith, don't know why they should love their faith and be active in it. And I think we need more of a balance. Now, I found out, depending on the school, depending on where you live, some schools have actually, the pendulum has come back a little bit. I think your age group has actually got more Catholicism, catechism, whatever, than in my day, or maybe in between. Your theology courses were fairly thorough.
Yes, and I mean,
and there's something else about proving the real presence.
what's that?
Because I remember one time I asked you, did you ever hear about a Eucharistic miracle? If you've heard of these hosts that bleed and things like that. And son of a gun, you knew about it. I was shocked.
Yeah, I do remember it was some kind of story that I couldn't tell you who or when it was, but I do remember saying that. But yeah, I mean, they at Bishop Brady, they do give you a good bunch of theology courses, and some of them are very to the point. They'll just be like normal theology, and then you'll have like a specific one about scriptures. Then I remember having ones like ethics and stuff like that, and yet somehow that fell into theology because you
with
thought
the
about
Catholic twist, of
exactly
course.
with the Catholic twist and stuff like that. But not everybody, even though this was a Catholic high school, not everybody who went there was Catholic.
Well, they didn't always have to take theology. We had those in my school too.
However, some were very devout. Like I remember, I know a student who was extremely devout, and I swear, was going to go into becoming a nun.
She was Catholic, yeah?
She was.
Oh,
She was,
okay.
but we thought she was, and she was so devout that we thought she would, but she didn't. So yeah, it was a good balance, but everybody who went there had to take the theology courses, and it was interesting.
One last question. Who really is Clavius the Tribune, and what do you think his future was?
Well, he was going to become a religious type person, very sincere, very helpful to the people around him. He really made a transition. He was the dynamic character, the key person in this story. And it's a good feeling to watch somebody develop there.
Do you think he became the 13th apostle? At least
he hadn't at the end. He hadn't shown that overwhelming enthusiasm yet, but there was a potential there.
What do you think, Susan?
I think of him as everyone. Not in first, you're being born, you don't know anything about God. And then as you go through life, it was clear at the end, he didn't know anything about Jesus, he didn't like Jesus and wanted him crucified. He could care less about him. And when he learned about him, he started to love him. And I think at the end, he goes off in the desert. And rather than going down in life, I see him rising in life. And he's everyone.
On a different track.
We are in search of God.
Well said. Any thoughts?
Who is Clavius?
And what was his future?
Who is he? He's Joseph Fiennes. No. No. I think he could have become, if you want to look at it in a slightly fictional setting, yeah, he could have become another apostle or something like that. Or he could have been another follower or teacher in the sense that, he knows about it now, even with the short amount of time that he spent with Jesus, who I'll also add is never called that in this movie. It's one of those few religious things that he's never called Jesus.
Well, no, they use his Hebrew name.
They use the Hebrew name,
Yeshua.
yeah.
Yeshua.
But
yeah.
They're speaking English though. This is not passion.
It's okay. They're trying to be as accurate as possible.
But no, I think he definitely could have become another apostle or disciple or teacher.
Well, hopefully we will all travel a road that puts us in the same direction as Clavius. I want to thank you all so much. I think this was a great show, and I'm very much looking forward to our next showing, which will be soon. And Daniel, listen for Daniel's show as the reel turns on the radio. And
do some praying. Let's do some praying here.
In closing, may the angels protect you and heaven accept you. This is Jean Verhoeven for Scripts and Scriptures. Here's a bonus feature from my other show, Verhoeven's Sake. Enjoy. Next time you're traveling and think it's a burden to find that local parish and its schedule, take into consideration the American heroes we call astronauts and their logistics. Starting in 1969 and as recently as 2013, communion has been part of these explorers' mission. It should be noted that the first time was symbolic and under the Presbyterian rite. It was a hot July evening in 1969, when in the cramped quarters of the Eagle of Apollo 11, several firsts were taking place. Obviously, human beings were on the moon. On the moon! Plus, they got there with less computer power than what is in your cell phone right now. Second man on the moon, Buzz Aldrin, had a plan. Maybe more like a vision. He wrote in Guidepost magazine, "We wanted to express our feelings that what man was doing in this mission transcended electronics and computers and rockets." He worked with his pastor, Dean Woodruff. One of the principal symbols, Dean says, is that God reveals himself in the common elements of everyday life. Traditionally, these elements are bread and wine, common foods in Bible days, and typical products of man's labor. Buzz continues, I wondered if it might be possible to take communion on the moon, symbolizing the thought that God was revealing himself there too, as man reached out into the universe. For there are many of us in the NASA program who do trust that what we are doing is part of God's eternal plan for man. Colonel Aldrin carried a miniature silver chalice and pieces of bread used in a special communion service the week before. Making it even more special was that as he carried out a similar service on the moon, his fellow parishioners were receiving the bread and wine and saying the same prayers back at Webster Presbyterian in Houston, Texas. This special moment came in the short window between touchdown on the moon and those first footsteps. There was a question about whether it was theologically correct for a layman to serve himself communion under these circumstances. Dean thought so, but got confirmation from their General Assembly. Houston, this is Eagle. This is the LEM pilot speaking. I would like to request a few moments of silence. I would like to invite each person listening in, wherever and whomever he may be, to contemplate for a moment the events of the past few hours and to give thanks in his own individual way. Buzz recalled, I poured the wine into the chalice our church had given me. In the 1/6 gravity of the moon, the wine curled slowly and gracefully up the side of the cup. It was interesting to think that the very first liquid ever poured on the moon and the first food eaten there were communion elements. He read, I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever remains in me, and I in him, will bear much fruit, for you can do nothing without me. John 15:5. In 1994, Catholic astronauts brought Holy Communion with them on the space shuttle. Sid Gutierrez, Thomas Jones, and Kevin Chilton, an extraordinary minister, were 125 miles above the Pacific when they shared a communion service. In November 2016, in the Arlington Catholic Herald, Tom Jones remembered, it's still very emotional for me to talk about how special that was to have God along with us, he said. To have his physical presence in the Blessed Sacrament on the ship was really something amazing. Jones said that although he didn't know the exact path he would take, faith helped him know he wasn't alone. In 2012, Dr. Jones told this story to Pathos.com. Our silent reflection was interrupted by a sudden burst of dazzling white light. The sun had risen, as it did 16 times each day, just as we finished communion. And now its pure radiance streamed through Endeavor's cockpit windows and bathed us in its warmth. To me, this was a beautiful sign, God's gentle touch confirming our union with Him. Tom continued, we are designed to be awed in space. If our imperfect species has found such glimmers of delight in our first tentative encounter with the cosmos, then we have truly found a most caring and generous God. One of the more recent stories of astronauts and Holy Communion comes from Catholic News Service. This time, receiving the Blessed Sacrament occurred amongst vast amounts of technology in what's referred to as the cupola. This location provides International Space Station astronauts 7 bay windows which provide a panoramic view of their home and a lot of inspiration. It was here that not just Catholic astronaut, but Catholic convert Mike Hopkins found himself awestruck. When you see the earth from that vantage point and see all the natural beauty that exists, it's hard not to sit there and realize there has to be a higher power that has made this. Under a special arrangement with the Archdiocese of Galveston-Houston, and with the help of Father James H. Kozinski, pastor of Mary Queen Catholic Church in Friendswood, Texas, Hopkins Parish, the rookie astronaut carried a pyx with 6 consecrated hosts broken into 4 pieces. It was enough so that he could take communion once a week for the 24 weeks he was aboard the ISS. Mike grew up in a United Methodist family, but completed the rite of Christian initiation of adults classes and became Catholic just before going into space. He said he wanted to become Catholic, not just because his wife and 2 teenage sons were Catholic, but because I felt something was missing in my life. Like his other space explorers, he agreed, knowing Jesus was with me when I stepped out the door into the vacuum of space was important to me. Another astronaut put it another way. Mike Good told CNS, heading out to the launch pad is like being in a foxhole. There's not a lot of atheists in a foxhole. I don't think there's many atheists sitting atop the launch pad. Some of the Catholics have taken crucifixes, prayer cards, icons, and other religious objects with them, including a Vatican City flag, which astronaut Mike Massimino later gave to St. John Paul II, and a prayer card depicting of Pope Benedict XVI, which he gave to the pontiff. Pope Benedict communicated with the crew aboard the ISS in May 2011 in a 20-minute conversation. Remember, the Vatican has been very involved in space. As Thomas Jones put it, the Vatican Observatory and those who work there are on the cutting edge of cosmology. When we look at the universe, we're seeing not only the natural world revealed through science, but also as it was created by God. We not only have this human curiosity to explore the universe, but also the receptivity to appreciate the beauty of it. That's a human trait that's part of your soul. There was actually a pastor in Houston, Father Tom Butler, who made astronaut and parishioner Bob Cabana an extraordinary minister of Holy Communion prior to his shuttle flight. After that, if a parishioner was going up, I would make them a Eucharistic minister, said Father Butler to the National Catholic Register in 2008. Poet and aviator John Gillespie McGee Jr. put it this way, and while with silent, lifting mind I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. Space may not be new to the Creator, but what an honor and thrill to have Him with you in the vast blackness above, that final frontier.
Bet you didn't know, unlikely saints and Catholics. Well, we may have to make this a recurring topic since we have a lot of data. When we think of saints, we often picture them with a glowing ring around their head, a list of good works, perhaps a religious order, or particularly undesirable death. The ones we're going to encounter today may give you the hope that you too, one day, may get a holy title. Take poor old Margaret, living out her life in Antioch. Much to the chagrin of her dad, the pagan priest, she finds her way to Christianity. Having survived that hurdle, she is sought after by a powerful Roman. Only problem, he only wants her if she will deny Christ. Margaret sticks to her guns, wears her cross proudly, and becomes the subject of said Roman's torture. She survives, but only to have a close encounter of the dragon kind with none other than the devil himself. You heard me. The devil shows up as a dragon and literally has her for lunch. Take a lesson from this saint and wear your cross all the time. Her cross was so irritating to the devil dragon's stomach, no Alka-Seltzer was going to help. Out came Margaret, safe and sound. However, the torture continued, and we lost Margaret in 304 AD. Nevertheless, that was not the last we heard of her. 1,000 years later, she revealed herself to Jeanne d'Arc, Joan of Arc, another saint with a story. Then there's Mary of Egypt, born 40 years after Margaret. You certainly can say Mary was enterprising. She was a salesman at 12 and expanded her territory at 29 and was a part-time philanthropist. The problem here is she was the product. She often refused payment because, well, she found her business just so fulfilling. For her, Jerusalem was a new market, not a holy place, until Mary tried to enter a church. She was unable to proceed, frozen in place by an invisible barrier. Mary may not have had high morals, but she was no dope. She knew it was her sins that created the invisible brick wall. She also knew to pray. She prayed and swore to avoid the pleasures of earth. Bang! She got the green light to enter. She was serious. Not only did she change her ways, but she deserted all pleasures. Mary became a desert hermit and ultimately a patron for the penitent. Okay, so how about unlikely Catholics? You'd be surprised, Pilgrim. John Wayne's career spanned 4 decades. He was Hollywood royalty. He was a proud Republican who was not afraid to vote for the other team or disagree with his own. He had 3 marriages, 1 Oscar, and 6 packs of cigarettes a day. He had well-known affairs and lived with his secretary for the last 6 years of his life. He also had a priest as a grandson. The Duke was received into the Catholic Church shortly before his death. California Congressman Alfonso Ebell had an interesting take on this larger-than-life convert. I quote it here partially. If you want the ending of this left-handed compliment, look it up. He said, "Each of us is a mixture of some good and some not-so-good qualities. In considering one fellow's man, it's important to remember the good things. We should refrain from making judgments." From a prince of Tinseltown to a prince of Russia, another unlikely convert was Demetrius Galitzin, who traveled in the highest of circles of society. He was raised in Holland, where his father was the ambassador. Cradled by Catherine the Great at 2 years old, he and the family were members for show in the Russian Orthodox Church. He was close friends with kings, princes, and other nobility in the late 1700s. When his mother found her way back to Roman Catholicism, Demetrius's circle was replaced with priests, teachers, and religious. He made the leap to Catholicism, which derailed his dad's plans for a military career, which he assumed would force him back to orthodoxy. He did a short stint in the Austrian service. To complete his aristocratic education, he set off for the young America. With a pseudonym, he traveled as a commoner. The needs of the U.S. Church called to him, and he was ordained a priest. Dad stepped in and arranged for him to report for duty in St. Petersburg. His mission sent him through Maryland to Virginia to Pennsylvania, where his ultimate work happened. He founded the Catholic settlement of Loretto. He had to thank his father, after all, because his military training provided the engineering skills to build the place. His parish, St. Michael's Church, was the only Catholic church located between Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and St. Louis, Missouri. He ministered throughout the Allegheny Mountains, complete with 150-mile sick calls. He suffered great sickness, hardship, and isolation. He lost his inheritance, once through Russian law, and again through his sister's failure to get him his share. He became an American and was nominated as bishop for several cities. As a convert and naturalized citizen, he taught, whatever differences on points of doctrine may exist amongst the different denominations of Christians, all should be united in the bonds of charity. All should pray for one another. All should be willing to assist one another. And, where we are compelled to disapprove of our neighbor's doctrine, let our disapprobation fall upon his doctrine only, not upon his person. This was expressed by Thomas Jefferson in the same era, and both are true today. He said, I never considered a difference of opinion in politics, in religion, in philosophy, as the cause for withdrawing from a friend. Priest and Prince Demetrius Augustine Gallitzin is now considered a servant of God, the very first step in canonization. How about that for some interesting Catholics? German Shepherd Protester. At the 2015 March for Life, I watched something very interesting. I'm one of those people who are rarely in photos or video because since I've been old enough to hold a camera, I've been the designated photographer. After all, I am from the home of George Eastman, Rochester, New York. My camera has often served as an icebreaker with strangers, a lifesaver to those who forgot theirs, and the way to chronicle our life. So, when those who chose to hold a walk for life from St. John the Evangelist Church to the State House, I chose to sit across the street with my camera and take it all in. What I saw blew my mind. For good or for bad, the marchers had to pass an abortion clinic, who also had a group of their own choosing on the front lawn. I watched these folks gear up as they passed out signs and repeated slogans. That's okay, this is America, and as pro-life as I am, I'm also pro-First Amendment. At one point, I was spotted by one of this group who motioned to me to come join them. I declined, trying not to reveal my preference in case it would invoke a reaction for the camera. Soon the anti-abortion group reached this contrary landmark. The marchers passed by in silence, most with their eyes down, many praying. I'm not sure if this demeanor was voluntary or it was decreed to avoid confrontation, but it was somber, quiet, swift, and solemn. There was one fellow who thought it better to greet them with a smile and hello, but not to engage. He kept moving. The stationary group, almost all women, compared with a young, old, family, and singles group on the move, increased their volume as each small group passed by. They challenged the walkers with sidewalk space, just enough to force them to move, and they shook their signs in their opponents' faces. Again, if you're talking free speech, this is pretty tame. Here is my problem as the observer. The clinic group chose to station a German Shepherd at the front edge of their lawn. Now, to be fair, I don't recall the dog being aggressive or attacking anyone, although you can see the leash holder speaking to it as people passed. Not sure if it was to hold it back or encourage it. But really? Is this fair game? Is this free speech? Is this safe? This canine was face to face with many children spanning the sidewalk. State your opinion, but there's no need to frighten anyone. I felt this was low and dirty. The marchers were quiet, peaceful, non-confrontational. What purpose did the dog serve? And don't tell me it was as protection, as these were prayerful, speedy, passive protesters making their way past a boisterous, passionate group. Aren't our differences severe enough that we shouldn't have to endanger each other too? To the pro-abortion group I say, play fair, play nice. We'll be praying for you.
Now we're at the New Hampshire State House.
I welcome, and I hope you all welcome, the people who are here exercising their First Amendment rights on behalf of their beliefs, because the reason we can all be out here is our First Amendment rights. It's so important. And I also welcome them because they're alive. Amen. They are God's children. And that's what we want in 40 Days for Life, is that God's love towards all of God's children, born and unborn. I used to do Operation Rescue many, many years ago. We'd all get arrested. We'd all get thrown in jail. And there were people that would, pro-life people who would condemn everybody, condemn the police and condemn this and condemn that. And I thought, every baby we save may grow up to be pro-abortion. Think of that. Love the people as people, no matter what their beliefs are. And that's what we stand for in 40 Days for Life, is we stand for simple love. And we pray that that love reaches these mothers and reaches these abortion workers and reaches people that don't know better than to support abortion. What Jesus said from the cross, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. It is ignorance, and that's not an insult. It's simply a lack of spiritual insight and light.
So our signs here say an unplanned pregnancy made me pro-life. And next to her, by her daughter, I am that unplanned pregnancy, which I think is brilliant. What about the other side here?
The other side, it says 10% of all aborted babies are LGBTQ. Let them be born that way with the rainbow. Because if you think about when they say that 10% of people are LGBT, well, then that would mean that 10% of people that have been aborted would be LGBT, I suppose. I guess
Right.
that's how it works.
Yeah. Wow. So we stand up for those babies as well.
Sure. You know, there's no reason to deny someone life over that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think if people knew that ahead of time, that would be one of those selective abortions where, you know, they're engineering their own kids, they want blue eyes or
I
whatever?
sure as heck hope not. You never know what you're gonna get, right?
Right.
I have two daughters, and they're both very, very different, and I love them both very, very much. The same infinite amount. So I really hope not. That's no reason to deny somebody life. Just, you know, so many other reasons are no reason to deny somebody life.
I think what she's saying is that all life is precious, regardless of what your circumstances are, or who you are, or what you're like.
And you were a surprise.
Oh yeah, I was a huge surprise to a very young mom who thankfully raised me to be a strong Christian.